It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. That's your favourite married couple. So I believe, Phil. Here we are on GB News, and we've lots coming up for you this morning.
Not an April Fool, is it?
No,
we're a
not
married
that
couple?
one. No, it is
okay.
for real.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people say, I know lots of people say, what's he doing with her, you know? Anyway, a police chief who investigated the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell has said that all drug users must take a share of the blame. We'll be asking, does he have a point?
And this week, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer blocked Jeremy Corbyn to run as a Labour MP in the next election. We'll be joined by journalist Michael Walker to discuss, was this the right move?
And we'll be looking at the big stories of the day with member of the London Assembly, Sean Bailey, and the former Labour MP for Rochdale, Simon Danchuk.
And as ever this morning, we want to hear from you, so get involved in the show. Email us at gbviews, at gbnews, or tweet us at gbnews. Before we start, though, here's the latest headlines with Tatiana.
Esther, thank you and good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Port of Dover has declared a critical incident due to the Easter holiday getaway causing heavy traffic. P&O Ferries and DFDS Seaways reported delays of up to 7 hours for ferry and coach services. They added bad weather and hold-ups at French border controls are partly responsible. The port says it's deeply frustrated as waiting times for coaches are still several hours. A man who's been charged with the murders of a father and son in Cambridgeshire will appear in court today. 66-year-old Stephen Alderton has also been charged with possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and son Josh were shot dead in separate villages near Huntingdon, 40 minutes apart on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether the shootings were linked to a custody battle. Millions of the lowest paid workers will get a salary boost from today as the national minimum wage is increased. The hourly rate will go up from £9.50 to £10.42 for adults. The government says the rise keeps it on track to achieve its manifesto commitment. Around 5 million people will be able to get a spring COVID booster jab from next week. Care home residents in England will be the first to receive the vaccine from Monday. All other eligible people, including those aged 75 and over or with a weakened immune system, will be able to book their jab online from Wednesday. The offer for anyone to get a first COVID jab will end at the end of June. The government is launching a bid to help businesses use less energy. Up until now, companies have had their energy bills capped, but from today, they'll only get a discount, which will remain in place until March next year. Public bodies will be told they can save money by putting timers on light and heating and switching to more energy-efficient bulbs. The government says smarter energy use will help lower operational costs, as well as help deliver on net zero. And water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution. The Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the courts, as well as lifting a cap on penalties, allowing unlimited fines. It comes as the latest Environment Agency figures show there were just over 300,000 sewage spills last year, averaging more than 800 a day. Controversial social media influencer Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan are home after being released from jail in Romania. They're being investigated on allegations of sexual assault, people trafficking and organised crime. The pair, who've been in custody since December and are now under house arrest until the end of April, have denied any wrongdoing. Speaking from home in Romania, Mr Tate said freedom at last.
I truly believe that justice will be served in the end. There is 0% chance of me being found guilty of something I have not done. I maintain my absolute innocence, and I think most people understand this, and I look forward to being home.
And in the US, at least 2 people have died, with dozens injured after a tornado hit the capital of Arkansas. Local police say about 2,000 residents in Little Rock City could be affected, with the mayor describing the damage as extensive. It's believed another tornado hit northern Illinois, ripping off the roof of an auditorium with 260 people inside. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Phil.
Thanks, Tatiana. Now to look at the top stories of the day. We're delighted to be joined by former Labour MP Simon Danchuk and member of the London Assembly Sean Bailey. Now, I have to say this week it's been very much, will Trump be indicted? Won't Trump be indicted? Yes, he is being indicted. In a way, was he actually pushing it that way? He's determined he's not going to wear cufflinks, but he is thinking that maybe those mugshots might be used for his campaign material. So has he been planning this all along, Sean?
Look, the circus that is Donald Trump rolls on. He has been saying for a long time he will be indicted. I think he was showing his political nous because he's basically said to America, this is a witch hunt, so this will happen. I think the jury is out on if this would be good or bad for him, but I tell you what, they've kept him relevant. By pursuing him in this nature, by trying to use the law against him as he sees it and his supporters see it, they've made him relevant. So at this point, it seems at least a no-score draw, but let's see, it might be 1-0 Trump at the end of the day.
Simon, do you think this is going to be good for Donald Trump?
I actually do. I think Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, has played into Trump's hands. I think it will embolden him, and it will certainly raise his profile, and it will keep him at the front of the news. And I think his supporters will support him even more, and people will come to him. It does look like they're playing politics with a very serious issue.
Well, on that point, I actually read overnight that Trump had received $4 million in campaign donations in the last 24 hours, and 25% of that was from people who had never donated to him before. Yeah. So that would give some credence to the fact that not only is it energising his base, there's also a few people who feel that he's the victim of a witch hunt.
Well, talking of Stormy Daniels there, the woman who he paid the hush money to, I thought, ouch, when I read what she said. She said, I've seen him naked, so no way will he be scarier with his clothes on. I mean, ouch, boys.
I feel sorry for him in that respect.
That'll probably lose him a few votes, wouldn't it, the thought of him with his trousers off?
I'm going to try not to imagine Trump with his trousers off. That might spoil my day. But look, she's just part of the circus, and for her and the profession she's in, this can only be more and more bank. But it goes to a deeper problem that I think all politics is having. The district attorney looks like he's too close to the people who want to prosecute Trump. It reminds me of our own Sue Gray issue over here. It looks like Sue Gray may have had some kind of ulterior motive because of her relationships, and it's the same here. And all of this just makes it harder for them to beat Trump. Even if he's found guilty, it will always look like it was some kind of political motivation.
And what is he? I know, obviously, it's sealed until Tuesday, and he'll be there, and we'll know exactly what they're bringing against him. But what is it, at the end of the day, that they are trying to, send him to prison on, get him a felony on? Because we all know, say he slept with a woman and he paid a hush money. What is it then they're going to put him to prison in?
Look, your guess is as good as mine. People have been talking about campaign donations, misappropriation, have been talking about tax. But of course, if you're as rich as Trump, your tax situation is always going to be interesting. The campaign thing, I don't know how much of that he'll wear, because his party might have to wear that. And the hush money, so-called hush money, in certain parts of America, that wouldn't be illegal. So let's see how it plays out in court.
And that's what I'm wondering. He might say, well, the money came from my campaign fund to pay her off. I didn't sleep with her. I needed to keep her quiet. It came from my campaign fund. Some people might say that was the best money he ever spent from his campaign fund. So what's that got to do with the country?
I think you're exactly right, and I think that's why he will get sympathy from this. I don't know whether it breaks the law to pay somebody hush money just to keep them quiet. I'm not sure it does. And I think he will be emboldened by this. I think the public will think will have a lot of sympathy with him on this issue. It looks like a storm in a teacup.
Stormy in a teacup.
Stormy in a teacup, perfect, absolutely. An attempt to stop him from being president.
I guess the thing is that if you are wanting to vote for a paragon of virtue to be the president of the United States, you were probably never really in the Donald Trump camp in the first place, were you? So
exactly.
But you always say, Phil, it's not actually the act, it's the cover-up that gets you done here. And that's what he did. The act, well, he says he didn't sleep with her, though she says, well, why is he paying me $130,000 if we didn't sleep together? But is it the cover-up?
I think Trump is such a particular character. There's nobody who supports Trump who's worried if he's been sleeping with porn stars. They probably imagine that's, just before breakfast. It's not a problem for them. The real issue here is for the Democrats, because it could look like they've tried to weaponise the American system against a former president. And what the Americans have is a real streak of independence. They don't like the idea that their power will be appropriated in this way.
And that seems to have galvanised all of the other sort of contenders behind him, doesn't it? That sort of galvanised the Republican Party to say this is weaponising of the sort of legal system for political means.
Yeah, I think it's helping him build support within the Republican Party. Senior representatives in the party don't feel they can come out against him. They're actually coming out supporting him against the Democrats.
So is it a rerun? Is it a Biden-Trump rerun?
It looks like the geriatrics will go again. It really does. But let's see. The Democrats have a bigger problem than the Republicans when it comes to decent other candidates. But this situation where senior Republicans now can't go against Trump is probably solidified his position. It'll be interesting if anybody could overtake Trump at this point.
Who wins between Biden and Trump?
This time round.
I think Trump could have a chance, actually.
I tell you what, America loses. because this whole situation is so divisive, it's so pulling the country apart that actually whoever wins, America loses.
Yes, and the other thing about Biden is that he's made it clear that he's not going to attend the King's coronation this year for whatever reason, whether he's too doddery or as a matter of principle, I don't know. We've got a poll going on Twitter about whether or not Biden should come to the coronation.
I mean, surely he should. I mean, he's saying he's busy, he's doing other things, but surely he should come to the coronation.
So join in the poll. Email us. Tell us what your view is about whether Biden should come, whether or not it's a snub. What do you think, Simon?
Snub?
Well, I think it looks like a snub. I think he should be there. And I suspect it is to do with his age and his ability to sustain
get
foreign
up the steps
travel.
on a plane. We've seen him trip up there before.
And all the rest of it. I think that's an issue for him.
Sean, what do you
Snub. This is a once-in-a-lifetime, certainly for Biden, occasion. He absolutely should be here. He's got to remember, the king isn't just the king is the people of this island. We'd like to see Biden get your old self over here.
And it's not like coronations happen every week, is it?
Precisely.
It's once in however many years.
The last one was more than 70 years ago. Yeah.
Now, I want to know what your view is on this in terms of political issues. It's the 1st of April today. This is in the Eye on page 9. Get ready for awful April. Tax and other bills will devour your money. Obviously, after the budget and the lack of increase in tax allowances, lots of people are going to be paying more tax. On average, it says here, according to the IFS, the basic rate taxpayer will pay about £500 more in tax this year, and higher rate taxpayers £1,000 a year more. And then underneath that, which I think is very clever, it's got a story that says Tories fear Sunak's wealth may alienate voters. And I just wondered, and Simon, I'd be particularly interested in your take on this as a former Labour MP in a working class area like Rochdale. Do you think people in places like Rochdale will think, you know, Rishi Sunak, he's so wealthy, he can't possibly understand the problems that I'm facing and the difficulties and the cost of living crisis, and my bills are going up and I've got less money to pay for them? Or do people, I suppose, the other case would be, well, you know, look, Rishi Sunak's so wealthy, he doesn't need all the grief. He could be sunning himself on a yacht for the rest of his life, and yet he's putting himself through all this hassle, you know, because he believes he wants to do the right thing for the country. What do you think people in places like Rochdale think?
I think the majority of people, it won't be an issue. I think the British public like to celebrate success. And they like to see somebody being successful. Sunak has been successful financially, and that will not be an issue against him. And I think the Labour Party have to be very careful about trying to weaponise that issue against Sunak. I think it could easily backfire. I think the majority of people in Rochdale will say, this is fine, you know, he's a wealthy guy, he's doing a job, a public service job, let him get on with it.
Well, they'd be thinking, like, thank goodness he's trying to stop the boats coming over across the channel. He's trying to stop the antisocial behaviour. They will be more important, Sean.
I'd say this. Most ordinary people think people in politics have money. So how much money you have is of absolutely no relevance. And they think, well, they've got money, they get it or they don't. The other end of this argument, people have to be careful, because you could suggest, well, if you come from a poor background, do you have the knowledge to deal with a lot of money, as in PM and Chancellor would have to? But I actually think the real issue here is, if you want to help people out, it isn't about giving money here and cuts there. It's about giving them back the money they earn. We should be talking about tax cuts. If Sunak wants to avoid a conversation about who's got a lot of money, give people the money they earned.
Yes. But, I mean, Simon, is it not a bad lot? I mean, he published his tax returns. £4.8 million was the Prime Minister's earnings over the past 3 years, which obviously most people, it's, you know, unbelievable numbers for them. The council tax is going up, the taxes are going up, the energy bills are going up. I mean, surely there must be lots of people who think...
And some of the support stopping.
How on earth can he understand my life and sympathise and tackle...
It will be whether he's doing a good job or not, and that's what they'll judge him on. I don't think the amount of wealth will be relevant. And the point that Sean makes, you know, is that everything's relative, whether Starmer's earning £1 million a year and Sunak's earning 15, 20 million. You know, it's in either case, it's a lot of money. But on the tax issue, it's the freezing of tax bands that's really impacting people, enabling the government to collect a lot more money in and taking a lot more money off hard-working families. That'll be the issue in Rochdale and elsewhere.
People will probably be shocked when they start paying their tax bills, not realising they've been sucked into a higher tax band. But I'm with Simon. I mean, does anybody, you know, who's a working class in Rochdale care that their favourite footballer for Man U, Liverpool, whatever, is on so much a week, so long as they're getting goals in the back of the net or stopping those goals coming in?
That's exactly right. Ultimately, again, I say, once you're past the point of worrying about money, you're in a particular place in poor people's minds. I struggle, they don't. It doesn't matter how well they do or how much I struggle. The other real piece here, though, is we now need an economic recovery that manifests itself in the pockets of the poorest.
And did we see that this week with the Brexit dividend? When we saw this Trans-Pacific deal being done, did you think, great, this is the start of moving on, this is us getting goods cheaper, exporting more, being part of a wealthier group, Sean?
I did, but I think this deal is important because we're now part of a group that will grow to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest economic bloc in the world, and that's very important for now and the future. But the real drag on our economy, the real problem we have here is the high level of people who are economically inactive. So we have a record amount of job vacancies, but we also have a record amount of unemployed people. There's a disconnection there. Until we reduce that number, our economy simply can't grow.
Do you think, Simon, that the trade deal, the CPTPP, if you have to get your teeth in to say that every time, do you think that resonates with voters, or do they not really care? Do you think it matters?
I think broadly it will be welcomed. I think Kemi Badenoch has done a great job in getting this deal over the line, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's a club that we want to be part of. It will put money in people's pockets. It allows us to export more and not pay tariffs on luxury goods that are made in the UK, and that creates more jobs in the UK.
I mean, the thing that's important to me about it is that, I mean, I set up Better Off Out in Parliament, the group, in 2006, long before it was fashionable. And it was deliberately called Better Off Out because I felt that we had to try and persuade people that we would be better off out of the EU, and to be global traders rather than sort of looking just to the EU. And I think the thing that struck me about this from The Economist was that at the moment the CPTPP and the EU both are about 16% of the world's economy. By 2050, the CPTPP will be 25% of the world's economy and the EU will be 10% of the world's economy. And I think it's the long-term benefit from this that's the important, rather than the here and now, isn't it?
Exactly, and I think that's why Kemi said ignore the sort of myopia of the BBC and those chanting it down, because actually it's where you're going. We see this as an engine of growth to be a part of a bigger organisation, and I don't think we made enough of that. And this is what Brexit was meant to be about. You know, paddling your own boat, being global, being outward-looking.
And it's very important because the rest of the world is now looking at who's in that group. So that's where the investment comes from. And if you're a person sat in Rochdale, Newquay, Manchester, all you want to know is, where is my next job coming from? Well, your next job is coming from the big industries that will be attracted to invest because we're part of a very big economic
And I
bloc.
smile because America might be wanting to rejoin. Trump took them out. Trump could be taking them back in. But look, stay with us. Simon, stay with us. Sean, coming up, a Merseyside police chief has said that all drug users must take a share of the blame for the death of Olivia Pratt-Cobell. Well, we'll be discussing this when we return.
And don't forget, if you're watching GB News on your TV and you're about to pop out, it's Saturday morning, you could be off to the supermarket, you never know. Make sure you tune in on Radio 2 so you'll never miss any of the conversation. See you in a minute.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new month, there are also signs that we are leaving the dull and rather wet conditions of March behind. High pressure is trying to build its way in, and that will eventually arrive as we head towards Sunday. For the 1st of April, though, we are still left with this low pressure system relatively in charge, and this lingering occluded front has brought some fairly damp conditions across Northern Ireland into parts of southwest England and Wales throughout this morning, and will gradually ease its way off throughout the afternoon as well. Some rain pushing its way into eastern coastal districts as well, but a few brighter spots for the far north of Scotland, as well as maybe western coast of Wales later on. It's the southwest where we'll see some of those higher temperatures throughout today, highs of 13, 14 degrees Celsius, but feeling that bit cooler in the breeze across those eastern coastal areas, no higher than 7 or 8. As we move into Saturday evening, the cloud remains with us for the most part, but the rain continuing to fade its way out, pushing more now into mainland areas of Scotland and easing off across Northern Ireland. Come the early hours of tomorrow morning, though, we will start to see the cloud breaking up a bit more across the eastern coast of Scotland and northeast England. That will allow temperatures to fall away off a bit more here, down into low single figures, but elsewhere holding up around 4, 5, 6 degrees Celsius. Into Sunday then, we start to see that cloud continuing to break up even more, and particularly across southern Scotland, central eastern areas of England, it's looking like a much brighter and sunnier day for many. Still a bit of cloud across southwest England, Wales, up into Northern Ireland and Scotland, but even here seeing highs of 10 to 11 degrees Celsius, so really not too bad of a day at all. We'll continue to see those clear spells as we move throughout Sunday night, and that is just going to allow temperatures to fall off more widely as we head into the night time. So a more widespread frost developing here and a cold start to Monday morning. But otherwise, as we head into the Easter holidays, it's looking fine and bright for many of us. Western and northern areas, though, just seeing a little rain as we head towards the middle of the week.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil.
Remember, you can get involved with any of today's stories. Simply email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. And also get involved in our Twitter poll about whether or not Joe Biden should be attending the King's coronation. He sort of suggested that he probably won't be.
He said he'll send somebody else who's kind of important.
His wife, I think, wasn't it? Or the vice president.
And it's being possibly.
So how's the poll going?
It said, we're asking, should the US President be attending? Well, so far, thousands of you have voted, but 43% are saying yes, he should, and 57% are saying no.
Oh.
I was quite surprised by that. I thought more people might be
that.
saying yes. Maybe the thing, well, if he doesn't want to come, we don't want him here. Maybe we should have asked that question instead. If you don't want to come, we don't want you here either, particularly if you're bringing all of your woke ways with you. We don't want them there.
Yeah, maybe most of our viewers would prefer Trump to come rather than Biden.
Yes. Well, there's anher thought.
But
you can email us that. Do you think Trump would be a better person?
He might be otherwise detained.
If he's not, I was going to say that, if he's not otherwise detained. Anyway, a police chief has said people who use recreational drugs are responsible for fueling the organised crime that led to the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell.
Assistant Chief Constable Chris Green of Merseyside Police, who was in charge of the investigation, has reopened the debate about the widespread use of drugs in society. Olivia Pratt-Corbell was shot dead by Thomas Cashman, a cannabis dealer, as he pursued a rival in Liverpool last year. On Thursday at Manchester Crown Court, Cashman was convicted of killing the 9-year-old following an 18-day trial.
Well, we're joined now by former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Met Police, Kevin Hurley. So, Kevin, do you agree with the Assistant Chief Constable, Chris Green from Merseyside, who said everybody is responsible for what happened? If you're taking drugs, you're responsible for what happened.
Yes and no. The bottom line is, in our country now, the drugs trade is now ruthlessly controlled by Albanian gangs up and down the whole country, with the exception of Merseyside, who have tenaciously held on to their piece of turf. Merseyside gangsters, led by people like Curtis Warren, once controlled the entire drug trade around all the holiday resorts and small towns all over the place, and indeed up in the northwest still do some of the county lines. The real issue is, what are we going to do about our supposed battle against drugs? Are we going to continue to lose it as the Albanians increase their organised crime hold on the UK, or are we going to do something different and consider different approaches to managing drugs in society?
OK, well, I want to ask you there about... I want to ask you there, you said Merseyside was the only place that wasn't. But what you're saying there is the criminals in Merseyside are ruthless. You're saying that. You're not saying the police are better. You're saying the criminals are ruthless. But look, don't the police, therefore, need to be ruthless across the country to get rid of the Albanians and get rid of the drug gangs?
Well, in an ideal world, the police would be a lot more effective. But I'll make 2 points. The first of which, the police, as we know it in the UK, due to the cuts in terms of the criminal justice system, the courts are overwhelmed, the prisons are full, the lack of drug treatment work, and of course, the police workforce being cut still by about 30-odd%, and all the other work they have to pick up. Now, the police are far less effective than ever they were before. That's the first point. And the second point is, we now probably have to accept that we are not going to be able to stem this flow of drugs within our own current legislative framework. The Albanians are not here by chance. They're here because we are very soft in terms of our legislation and the way in which we proceed against gangsters. They've decided to come here because we're easier to exploit than the French or the Belgians and so on. It's as simple as that.
So what are you suggesting, Kevin? Are you suggesting that the police get much tougher as they may do in other countries, or are you suggesting that the police in effect throw their hands up in the air and say we can't do it and let's legalise all of these drugs? Which way do you think the country should go?
Well, what I'm saying is, on the first point, it's not just the police that play the part in it. It's everyone involved in the criminal justice system and social services. So we either have significant reinvestment in the police, the court services, the Crown Prosecution Service, the prison and CPS. Because to be fair to the police, and I'm a big critic of many aspects of it, I might add, the prisons in the UK are full to bursting. And it wasn't RSPCA that put them there. So the police actually couldn't do much more when you've got 2- and 3-year waiting lists in the courts. So maybe there is a time now for us to think, well, these Albanians are here and they're becoming strong and they're very, very vicious, equally matching the violence of these Merseyside gangsters. maybe we need to take the profit out of this. And if you think about it, we know how many people die every year as a result of abuse of alcohol and the abuse of cigarettes. Maybe 500 years ago, if we knew about that and we thought the way we are now, we might have gone the other way of say, ban them. But the fact is, drugs are awash across the country.
Yeah, the problem, I guess, with legalisation, Kevin, whether it's desirable or not, in terms of the practical thing, given that they are ruthless, these gangs, I can't believe that they're going to sit back and allow people that are their customers that they deal to allow them just to go to the local legal shop to buy. Presumably they'll say to their customers, look, if I catch you going and buying your drugs somewhere else, I'm gonna do your kneecaps in. So you're not actually going to get people going somewhere legitimate. That most legitimate companies, Boots aren't going to start selling cocaine, are they? They're not, I mean, reputationally, they're just not going to do that. And even if they did, presumably, all of these gangs would just go from selling their stuff to adults to selling it to children who weren't allowed to buy it legally. So it seems to me that on every level, legalising drugs, whether it's philosophically, you can have a philosophical debate about it, but surely it's actually not going to achieve what people think in terms of stopping these ruthless gangs.
Well, you need to look at this really as a strict business and look at what is their business model. First off, the customer is always king in any business you work on. So there's no way that gangsters are going to kneecap or give trouble to people who are going to buy their cocaine or cannabis, because that's where their money comes from. At the moment, what they try to do is cut out their competition, which is probably what that shooting in Merseyside was all about, or a drug debt. But the issue on it comes is if we did decide to follow that route, which is something I've opposed all my life, but I now see that we're up against a way we cannot deal with if we're not prepared to resource it, then we need to look at how could we make it an option for people who wish to buy those different drugs. We let people buy alcohol. It kills hundreds of thousands a year. Cigarettes are responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths a year. We need to think about this in another way. If we are not going to pump in another 100,000 cops, build extra prisons, extra courts, so that the business model for the Albanians and the Merseyside gangsters doesn't affect their cost-benefit analysis, where there's a greater chance of getting 25, 30 years in prison.
We've got where you're going. We've got where you're going, and we agree that we certainly wouldn't be throwing our hands up and saying it's over. Get more prison places. Make sure that you can put these criminals behind bars. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. But Philip, what he was talking about there is take the money out of the drug game, and then maybe it won't be so violent. You can legalise it. We'll get rid of those criminal gangs. But I'm with you. No, you won't. They'll find other people they'll want to sell to, or they'll make the drugs different, so the drugs are harsher or different. They will make sure they keep selling to the public, won't they?
Yeah, I agree. I also don't quite agree with this Assistant Chief Constable about anyone who takes recreational drugs is partly responsible for the death of
I do.
Olivia.
I agree with that.
No,
I agree with Chris Green.
Let's pin the blame on the person who actually did the murder. Let's not try and spread the blame.
Oh no, get him. He's behind bars.
I know,
we've got him. But I agree. I remember years ago, 2006, the Vice President of Colombia said, all you celebrities who are taking cocaine are to blame for what's happening on the streets of Colombia, because you're taking it. Because without people wanting it, we wouldn't have people trying to sell it. So they are part of it.
Well, that's like saying, well,
anyway, we want to hear.
I know. That's like you saying, well, because you won't legalise it, you're responsible because you allow it.
Rubbish,
you can't. Let's blame the people who did the crime. What do you think? Whose side are you on in this debate? Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk. But still to come on Saturday morning with Esther and Phil, has Sir Keir Starmer made the right decision to ban his predecessor from running as a Labour MP at the next election? Journalist Michael Walker will be joining us to discuss. You won't want to miss that.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. It's 10:38. Lots of views coming in. Esther?
Quick on the keyboard here, Margaret. Of course, people who take drugs are responsible for the drug crimes and deaths in their communities. Where there is a demand, there will be a supply, which is exactly what I was saying.
And Max agrees. I've said for years that drug users should be treated as the criminals they are, supporting a violent gang of killers called dealers and not as victims of the dealers. Looks as if I've got a minority opinion
And
once
Stuart
again.
says drug users, dealers and all those who've turned a blind eye over the last 30 years are to blame. Shameless elements of society who simply do not care or possess any morality. Call them out.
I'm in a minority opinion again.
And this one from Alison, because obviously we've got that poll running. Do you think Biden should be coming to the King's coronation? Rumour is, or what we've read in the papers, he's not coming. Alison said, if he's too old to come to the coronation, then he's too old to be president, because he said maybe that was one of the reasons he wasn't coming. He was too old and doddery, so wanted to send his kids or something, or maybe not his kids.
Robert says, I agree, invite Trump, great friend and supporter of our royal family in the UK. Biden's not wanted by most of us. Keep those views coming in.
Now, this week, the former Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, said he had no intention of stopping fighting for his constituents after being blocked from running as the Labour candidate, saying he would not be intimidated into silence.
So Keir Starmer got the party's National Executive Committee to block his predecessor from contesting Islington North for Labour at the next election.
Well, we're joined now by journalist and contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. So was this a big mistake by Keir Starmer to block what was a former leader of the Labour Party standing for his seat that he stood for and won for 50 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's deeply unfair, and I think it is fairly undemocratic. If you've got someone who is a significant figure in public life, who is a former Labour leader, then it shouldn't really be up to the leader to say, or the new leader, sorry, to say that that person cannot stand as an MP. I mean, we have a two-party system. It's very difficult to have a political voice unless you have it within the Conservatives or the Labour Party. So I do think it matters if people can arbitrarily be dismissed from one of those two parties or be told that you cannot stand as a representative. So I do think it's concerning. I mean, Keir Starmer thinks that it will help him in the general election. It might, get some people on side. I think it'll also turn off a lot of people because while Corbyn, yes, by the end of his leadership at the Labour Party, he wasn't particularly well loved among the general population. There is a significant minority of the population who, similar to myself, saw that he is someone who had some decent ideas about where to take this country. And so the idea that that part of the Labour coalition has been totally excluded from it, I think is, it does have a potential to backfire.
How do you see this, Michael? Whether you agree with it or not, do you see that this is a matter of principle for Keir Starmer because, he wants to stop Jeremy Corbyn because of the damages he sees it that Jeremy Corbyn did to the Labour Party brand and obviously particularly with the allegations around anti-Semitism? Or do you think this is just a matter of political calculation on his part?
Well, he's been quite open about this in the sense that the motion that was put to the NEC, so Labour's ruling committee, it didn't mention anything such as anti-Semitism or anything such as that. It didn't even mention any rules which may or may not have been broken. So all it said was that it would be not in Labour's electoral interest to put Jeremy Corbyn up as an MP at the next general election. Therefore, we're going to block him. Now, that seems a little bit arbitrary to me. I didn't really realise that we were sort of excluding people from being MPs on the basis of focus groups or opinion polling. So it does seem to me that is a bit of a rewriting of the Labour Party's rules.
Oh, now I was going to say, what will Jeremy Corbyn do next? Will he say, do you know what, this is my seat, my people, I'm going to stand in my seat, Islington North there? Or do you think he will say, well, I'm going to go for the Mayor of London instead? What's he going to do next?
I think it's quite likely he'll go for Islington North. He's been an MP there for 40 years and the constituents know him well. He's very well liked in the constituency. So I think he would have a good chance of beating whoever Labour put forward in that seat. And apparently there are not many people who want to be put forward in that seat. And I think people from the left of the party, that would be, a reasonable outcome. I expect we'll have a Keir Starmer government after the next general election because your lot have destroyed the economy and people are sick of waiting so long on the NHS waiting list. So it's quite possible that we get a Keir Starmer minority government even, and then you have independents such as Jeremy Corbyn on the backbenches to try and make sure that, I suppose, my part of the coalition still has a voice.
Well, talking about my area of Merseyside, who might be deeply upset that Corbyn's gone, could you form a split in the party? Will he form a new party? I was reading that Jeremy Corbyn might think of getting the old band back together and forming a new further left-leaning party.
I think it's probably unlikely. I think in Islington North, one, he has a good chance of winning because he's so well known there. I think, a party to the left of Labour could potentially cost them votes, but I don't know if it would get many MPs. And again, I think there are so many people who are so tired of 13 years of Conservative government, of 13 years of austerity, of 13 years of running down the NHS, that while there is a lot of anger on the left at the moment at Keir Starmer for what he has done to Jeremy Corbyn, I don't think people would take a decision which they think could jeopardise a Labour win and therefore allow, another 5 years of Tory government, which we can't really afford as a country.
Michael Walker, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. It's a really interesting subject. I'm sort of with Michael there. I think political parties are coalitions, aren't they? And I don't see why you should exclude a part of the coalition that you don't agree with, from the party. And also, you've got to bear in mind, Jeremy Corbyn was an MP all the time that Tony Blair was Prime Minister, and that didn't seem to cause anyone any particular problem. So I think it is I think it's quite vindictive.
I wonder whether it could be break-off group because he's caused upset with people saying, well, hang on, Keir, you were in his shadow cabinet, you called him a friend, you campaigned for him, you took on his policies when you became leader. So you've got Diane Abbott there, you've got Robert Bergen there, who's sort of, upset.
I think it's an interesting... It was really good to get Michael Walker's opinion. We may ask Simon Danchuk for his view as a as a former Labour MP too.
Now, the energy bill relief scheme for non-domestic energy customers ended yesterday. The scheme was introduced in October 2022 for 6 months to help businesses, public sector and voluntary sector organisations such as charities with their rising energy bills over the winter.
Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced in January that a new energy bills discount scheme would replace the former support from today and run until 31st of March 2024. However, businesses are being advised to monitor their bills, particularly as some energy suppliers have been increasing their standing charges. Well, we're joined now by the Director of Annex Solutions, Warren Duckett. Warren, you're an energy broker for independent businesses. Just first of all, on this variety of prices that people are being charged, I mean, how wildly different are those prices for businesses at the moment?
Yeah, good morning, Philip. Good morning, Esther. We're seeing some huge variations, especially for people that have, or businesses that have ended up on standard variable prices. I think with the domestic market, everybody thought the right thing to do was go on a variable price and be protected by the price guarantee. A lot of businesses thought that was the right thing to do on the business side of things as well. So we're seeing some, particularly on the standing charges, massive standing charges compared to what smaller businesses should be paying. So we may see standing charges at £1.50 a day. We're seeing lots at £2.50 a day, even examples at £4 a day on a standing charge, when a smaller business really should be paying between 30, 45 pence a day, and businesses are paying £750 a year more on a standing charge than they need to. Just this week, we've seen a telecoms business in Bradford, 2 electricity meters, paying £2.50 a day on each meter on a variable standard variable price. And it's huge savings can be made by getting on a fixed price tariff.
Price of energy, you said that the people on a standing charge will be paying 30, 40, 50 pence a day, and if they're being paying more than that, then they're overpaying. In terms of, for businesses, the price of energy itself, what sort of price should people be paying at the moment, and how does that compare with, say, how it was before the lockdowns?
Yeah, really good question. And where things stand today, it's so much better compared to where things were September, October time. At that particular time, we were seeing prices as much as 10, 11 times where the market had been pre-energy crisis. To put things in perspective, it is better now, but we're still sat where the prices available on a fixed price deal for smaller businesses are around 2.5 times where the market was pre-energy crisis, but it is still obviously a much, much better position where things were September, October 2022, where we were seeing some huge prices and a lot of suppliers actually withdrawing from the market and not having tariffs available.
And just finally, Warren, obviously the government's changing the support levels for businesses starting today. I mean, how worried should businesses be about that change in support? And is it going to be considerably less than it was before for most businesses?
Yeah, there's two factors to that, Philip. First of all, the price that businesses have to pay to get the support, that has increased. And also the discount that will be available is also smaller. So you might find that some businesses that are getting a discount on the previous energy bill relief scheme won't qualify for a discount under the new energy bills discount scheme. So yeah, it's affecting in two ways, really.
Were businesses getting, what percentage decrease were businesses getting on their energy bills because of government support?
Yeah, again, it's quite complicated. The discount was different for every single business, all relating on to what price they were paying in relation to on the date the contract was signed. So you may have seen some businesses receiving discounts of 10, 11, 12 pence a kilowatt hour, but there were some businesses receiving discounts in the high 30s up to the maximum of 40 pence a kilowatt hour. So it really was quite varied depending on, when the contract was signed and what the price the business were paying.
Warren Duckett, thank you so much indeed for joining us this morning. Really important stuff, isn't it, really? And it just shows the importance of shopping around, particularly if you're a business.
I didn't like the standing charges increasing. What was that? Was that the company saying, we're not making enough money here, let's squeeze more money out of our customers?
Because of the price guarantee, and they were therefore squeezed on that. They were making up the money on the standing charge, and I think
like the sound of that.
I think people as well as businesses should be well aware of the standing charge prices.
As the King boarded the plane home last night, he'll be hoping his first foreign state visit to Germany was a job well done.
With the goal in mind to reset Anglo-German relations following our departure from the European Union, our royal reporter Cameron Walker has been following the action.
Buckingham Palace wanted the King's first state visit of the new reign to celebrate Britain and Germany's shared history, culture and values. In Hamburg yesterday, the King and Queen Consorts visited St Nikolai Church, which was heavily bombed by the Allies during World War II, and the British King and the German President collectively laid wreaths in a memorial service. Yesterday in Hamburg, the Queen Consort wore a brooch which belonged to Queen Victoria, given to her by Prince Albert, her husband, who of course was also German. I talked about celebrating values. There were a lot of engagements involving Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. Now here, where I am at the City Hall in Hamburg, just outside, the King and Queen Consorts greeted the crowds here. Thousands of people turned up to greet them, including a few of those Ukrainian refugees, and I spoke to them a little earlier.
We want to say thank you for supporting us. We want to say thank you for King, thank you for England, because it's really important for us. It's historical year for all world and for Ukrainians and England indeed. So we are feeling that your country with us. So today we are with you.
Well, the three-day state visit to Germany also touched on sustainability, one of King Charles's passions. The Queen Consort also visited a local school and read to school children, literacy, of course, being one of her passions. And the whole state visit was rounded off by a magnificent reception at the Schuppen 52 area or building in Hamburg. 1,000 guests turned up. There were musical performances celebrating the shared culture of Germany and the United Kingdom. If you were to ask me, has this three-day tour been a success? Well, if you look at the crowds here, if you look at the press reports and newspaper reports in both Britain and Germany, I would say it very much has been. There has been no major distraction, as we have seen on recent foreign royal visits in the last year or so. The King and Queen Consorts have carried out a number of engagements. The crowds seem to adore them. So it's not, there was a sense that when Queen Elizabeth II passed away, that the global appeal of the monarchy would perhaps die with her. I think the tour here in Germany has strongly suggests that is not the case, and that is very much welcome news for Buckingham Palace and the King as we look towards his coronation happening in literally 5 weeks' time.
Thank you there, Cameron Walker. Now, is it Charles mania? Is he wooing the world, Simon?
I think he will do, and I think he's already started. And we were talking about trade deals earlier and the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal that's just been done. And we can't underestimate how popular our royal family are in terms of stimulating trade, actually. And if you combine that Pacific Partnership deal with the Commonwealth and what we can do throughout the Commonwealth, which is a third of the world's population, stimulated by King Charles, I think there's real opportunities for us.
So actually, it's all the stars have aligned in one way or another. We've got the start of these new Trans-Pacific deals, we've got the coronation, so the spotlight of the world is here, and Charles becomes very relevant.
I always said, look, Charles has had a great model, and he had our late Queen to follow, so he's had a real education on what to do. And I think Charles is his very own man. And when he spoke to the German Parliament in German, that was just a little flourish, just to show the rest of the world, this is what I'm going to be like. I'm going to surprise and I'm going to delight all the time. And if you go to people who are Republicans, this is an opportunity to display what the royal family can do. That soft power, that hand of friendship that has no politics attached to it is very important for the future of this country. And it looks like Charles is going to be very good at it.
The thing that struck me, Simon, about Cameron's report there was, I mean, obviously his speech had gone down well, as Sean said, at the Parliament, and diplomatically it had worked. But it was the point that Cameron made about the crowds on the street and how pleased they were to see him, and in a way that if it was a politician going as a head of state, you probably wouldn't see, would you? And that's that showed to me that showed the whole reason and the benefit of having a royal family and a non-political head of state.
Absolutely, and the recent global happiness survey that's been published shows that those countries that do have a monarchy are more likely to be happy. So there are many benefits actually from not being Republican.
I also wonder if other members of the family need to pull the finger out a little bit more now. We're going to have to do a sort of getting round the world if we're wanting to have these deals going. A bit like you said, it's the royal family doing this soft diplomacy. And I have to say, when Meghan and Harry got married, I really thought, what a wonderful couple, what a wonderful combination. They could have gone to the Commonwealth while Kate and Wills stayed here in the sort of Europe and the Americas, what have you. What did you think? And they've lost all that. They've thrown that away. Meghan and Harry have thrown that away.
I actually thought that was the plan. I thought that's what they were going to do. To my mind, it seemed like a great plan. If I had ministered the royal family, it'd have been like, here's your portion of the work. You do the world and the Commonwealth. But what it means in reality is Charles will have to do more. William would have to do more. They're going to have to demonstrate their worth. And I always...
Kate's doing a lot more.
And good for her. But I always look at the royal family through the eyes of a Republican and say, how can you justify, which in some cases is an expensive, nice to have, well, how you do that is by making more than you cost. And that going around the world, there's a bit that's immeasurable, you know, the friendships they make, but there's also a direct pound value. Who have you met that we can then send a politician to meet to make business with?
Sean, Simon, thank you very much there. So you're watching Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. Plenty more still to come, including the government's plans to stop antisocial behaviour by allowing landlords to evict tenants within 2 weeks. Plus, we'll be asking whatever happened to Tory Liverpool. Don't go anywhere, stay with us. I'm asking that question.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family. GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil here on GB News. We've got lots coming for you this morning.
We've just been discussing the peanut butter Kit Kats, to be perfectly honest. While you were, I didn't even know they existed, but I'm all excited about that. Anyway, this week the government outlined plans to tackle antisocial behaviour, including potential new proposals to allow landlords to rapidly remove troublesome tenants. We'll be joined by the Chief Executive of Property Mark to get his thoughts.
And are right-wing comedians sexist and racist? Well, that's what Eddie Izzard thinks. Our very own headliner Leo Kearse will be joining us to share his thoughts.
And shortly we'll be reflecting on the week's news with the member of the London Assembly, Sean Bailey, and the former Labour MP for Rochdale, Simon Danchuk.
And I've heard this morning we want to hear from you, so get involved with the show. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. But before we start, here's the latest headlines with Tatiana.
Esther, thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Port of Dover has declared a critical incident as the Easter getaway has caused heavy traffic. P&O Ferries and DFDS Seaways reported delays of up to 7 hours for ferry and coach services. They added bad weather and hold-ups at French border controls are partly responsible. The port says it's deeply frustrated as waiting times for coaches are still several hours. A man who's been charged with the murders of a father and son in Cambridgeshire will appear in court later today. 66-year-old Stephen Alderton has also been charged with possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot dead in separate villages near Huntingdon, 40 minutes apart on Wednesday. Police are investigating whether the shootings were linked to a custody battle. Millions of the lowest paid workers will get a salary boost from today as the national minimum wage is increased. The hourly rate will go up from £9.50 to £10.42 for adults. The government says the rise keeps it on track to achieve its manifesto commitment. Around 5 million people will be able to get a spring COVID booster jab from next week. Care home residents in England will be the first to receive the vaccine from Monday. All other eligible people, including those aged 75 and over or with a weakened immune system, will be able to book their jab online from next Wednesday. The offer for anyone to get a first COVID jab will end at the end of June. The government is launching a bid to help businesses use less energy. Up until now, companies have had their energy bills capped, but from today, they'll only get a discount, which will remain in place until March next year. Public bodies will be told they can save money by putting timers on light and heating and switching to more energy-efficient bulbs. The government says smarter energy use will help lower operational costs as well as help deliver on net zero. Water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution. The Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the courts, as well as lifting a cap on penalties, allowing unlimited fines. Environment Agency figures show there were just over 300,000 sewage spills last year. Shadow Justice Secretary Steve Reed says the Conservatives have lowered environmental standards.
Everyone is going to feel as disgusted as I am to know that there are 800 occasions every single day when raw sewage is being pumped into our rivers, in our villages, in our towns, in our cities, on our beaches. It's not just disgusting and polluting and damaging the environment, it's actually damaging business as well, because holidaymakers are not going to go to these places. The hospitality industry will suffer as a result.
Controversial social media influencer Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan have been released from jail in Romania. They're being investigated on allegations of sexual assault, people trafficking and organised crime. The pair, who've been in custody since December and are now under house arrest until the end of April, deny any wrongdoing. Speaking from home in Romania, Mr Tate said freedom at last.
I truly believe that justice will be served in the end. There is 0% chance of me being found guilty of something I have not done. I maintain my absolute innocence, and I think most people understand this, and I look forward to being home.
Well, over in the US, at least 2 people have died, with dozens injured after a tornado hit the capital of Arkansas. Local police say about 2,000 residents in Little Rock City could be affected, with the mayor describing the damage as extensive. It's believed another tornado hit northern Illinois, ripping off the roof of an auditorium with 260 people inside. And the Pope has left hospital after being treated for bronchitis. 86-year-old Pope Francis was seen waving to well-wishers as he returned to the Vatican after being in hospital for 3 days in Rome. A Vatican spokesperson says he's expected to take part in this weekend's service for Palm Sunday, kicking off a week of Easter celebrations. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Phil.
Thank you, Tatiana. Or from now on, the peanut butter Kit Kat loving Tatiana, as I'm going to call her. Anyway, it's been a busy news week, and to help us reflect on some of the biggest stories, we're delighted to be joined in the studio still by former Labour MP Simon Danczuk and member of the London Assembly, Sean Bailey. Welcome back, both of you. Simon, in the first hour, we spoke to Michael Walker about Keir Starmer blocking Jeremy Corbyn from standing at the next general election as a Labour candidate. As a former Labour MP, I was just interested to know what your take was on that.
Keir Starmer's made a political calculation that he's better off without Corbyn as a Labour candidate, Labour MP. But I actually think it's a risky strategy, more than he might realise. Obviously, Corbyn might set up a left-leaning party and take votes away from Labour. It's unlikely, but he might do. More interestingly, he might stand for Mayor of London, and that would deprive Sadiq Khan from the seat. But look, let me just make this final point. The riskiest bit of the strategy is if the public see Keir Starmer as being deceitful. Keir Starmer is a friend of Corbyn, he's been close to him for a very long time, wanted to make him Prime Minister, defended him over anti-Semitism, and now he stabbed him in the back. And it sort of looks a little bit like that relationship between Ed Miliband and David Miliband when Ed stabbed David in the back, and that used to get a lot of traction on the doorstep. And so this negative aspect to it, where Starmer has stabbed his friend in the back, might actually turn sour for Starmer.
People forget about that, don't they? You've got to have a happy set of MPs behind you, because those are the ones who can start causing the trouble. And when I asked the journalist, did he think he'd go independent? Would he stand for Mayor of London and cause troubles there? He smiled, but he said no, he wouldn't. But I thought, I bet you it's not so fixed that.
But given how unpopular Jeremy Corbyn clearly was at the last general election, is this not a sensible calculation from Keir Starmer that if he wants to show that the Labour Party's changed since the last election, what better way of showing that the Labour Party's changed than actually Jeremy Corbyn is now no longer even a Labour MP? Is that not a sensible political calculation?
Well, that's a calculation he's made. But if the public see it as though Starmer has stabbed his old friend in the back, they won't like that either. And I think that, just like they didn't like Ed Miliband having done the dirty on David Miliband, and that used to come out on the doorstep time and again. And it's irrespective of whether Corbyn's, popular or not. It's a reflection on Starmer's character.
Well, Simon, our viewers are thinking you're right there. Andy says, look, I detest, can't stand Jeremy Corbyn, but in a democracy, he has every right to stand in a general election for a party he's been with for, 40 years. Being thrown out like this is not right. And Della says the same thing. I disagree with Corbyn, but I defend his right to stand and put himself forward to stand for the Labour Party. So they're in accord with you. That's how they're viewing it on the street.
It would always be unfortunate, wouldn't it, Sean, if people with minority opinions in a political party were no longer. It wouldn't be very very
You'd
good
be
for
out
me.
the party,
I'd be there in no
Phil would
time
be
at all.
right out.
But it would be a shame. I mean, political parties are a coalition, aren't they? And you know, surely it's a good thing that there's a range of views within those political parties, isn't it?
There's two ways to look at this. First, it's anti-democratic, and it's actually a shame in the entire Labour Party that it's even possible to do this, because Jeremy Corbyn is elected by his local people, and if they want rid of him, they can get rid of him and should be allowed to. I don't think the leader of the party should be making an arbitrary decision like this. That's the first piece. The second piece is Jeremy Corbyn still retains a serious amount of popularity. He's not popular with me, but I bet you if he stands as an independent, he wins that seat. And the rumours that he might run for Mayor of London, he would make a significant dent. As someone who knows about running for Mayor of London, I would suggest he'd be a very serious candidate. But the real situation is this.
Just like Ken Livingstone, won as an independent against Frank Dobson.
Exactly.
And that's when I said he was getting the old band back together.
Yeah,
Ken Livingstone is part of the band he's getting back together on the left.
He could do you have a Sadiq Khan who's not as popular as he used to be, and you have a Jeremy Corbyn who could make quite a dent. But the real issue is this. When people look at Keir Starmer, they'll remember, but you were the man who fervently pushed this man to the top of the pile. You talked about supporting him left, right and centre, and now you've abandoned him because it suits you. This says something about who you are, and I'm not sure I want a duplicitous person running the country.
Sean, I also have to ask, why did the leader of the Labour Party dirty his hands? Why is he known as the one who blocked it? Because then that means that he absolutely wanted people to know that usually, if you're a leader of the party, you'd be far more discreet and other people would have blocked it.
Because maybe other people didn't want to do it.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to.
But, I mean, Simon, as a former Labour MP, who would be your... If Jeremy Corbyn does stand as an independent in Islington North, which all the indications are that he may well do that, who would your £10 be on as to winning that seat? Would it be the official Labour Party candidate, or would it be Jeremy Corbyn?
No, I think Jeremy Corbyn would have a good chance of winning that. But I think Starmer's making a number of strategic errors here. We saw it with Sue Gray. You make the point quite rightly. Why did he dirty his hands? Why didn't he get somebody else within the NEC to move this proposal? And the biggest problem is that they got rid of him on the basis of not being electorally popular, not because of anti-Semitism, but that just looks like opportunism. We're going to get rid of you because you're going to lose us votes, and that just looks like opportunism and doesn't play well with the electorate.
Sean, what's your story that you want to raise?
I want to talk about stealth tax. So, Rishi Sunak changed where you get your tax charged to you, and it's been set for 4 years, and it was said that it would only cost the public $9 billion. It now looks like it could cost significantly more. But my real thing for bringing this up is we talk about a cost of living crisis. Tax is one of the biggest outgoings that you have. If we really want to support people, it's always been about letting them keep the money they earn. And what's most important about that is why would I be employed? So if you've got all these 50-somethings who are leaving, they're leaving for tax issues. You've got all these younger people who can't work for tax issues. And I think as a country, as a government, we need to have a look at what taxes we charge, be much more open about it. If you look at what the Roundtree Trust is saying about tax, our tax bill is going up significantly and nobody's talking about it. And most importantly, with a general election coming and the Labour Party constantly talking about austerity, it'd be really interesting to see where they're going to get all this extra money from, considering we have the biggest tax burden we've had for 70-odd years.
I mean, Sean makes a good point, doesn't he, Simon, about the tax burden and how damaging that could be for the Conservative Party at the next election. I've seen a concerted effort by the Labour Party to say, you know, are you better off than you were at the last general election, or are you worse off? In a way that Ronald Reagan did when he stood for president the first time and asked that very same question to the American people: are you better off or are you worse off? And he won the presidential election on the back of it. I mean, that could be quite a successful strategy for Labour, couldn't it? Just asking that question to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they're saying is, are you better off than you were 13 years ago? And it is smart. That is a smart strategy in terms of campaigning. And I think the Conservatives need to do something about it. And it is about stealth taxes. It's about, as we said earlier, the tax bands being frozen, so more is being taken away from people, and they just feel and are worse off than they used to be.
They're called stealth taxes. And I understand why they're called stealth taxes, but they're not really, are they? Because at the end of the month, when you get your pay at the end of it, then you know what you now know what you're getting compared to what you were getting. So it's not very stealthy in that regard, is it?
No, but you might not been expecting it.
Where the stealth comes in. Yeah. The fact that the tax ban has been frozen for 4 years, normally a government would move those bans as a response to inflation, and we've had massive inflation recently, so you think, oh, the government's going to raise it as they've done traditionally. No, we're stuck in a position
I'm
and
going to
inflation's
ask
going the
another
wrong
question, because obviously Phil and I interviewed the Chancellor, and obviously we've spoken to Rishi, and they were sort of alluding to they would drop the taxes closer to the general election. But whether they do or don't. Now, my concern is that leaving it too late? People will have said, I felt the pain for too long. But they say, no, people are so myopic now. You're only remembering what, life's so busy, you're only remembering what happened today. Is it a mistake? Should they have done it in this budget, or could they get away with it next budget and people feel better?
I think they are leaving it late. And just picking up on the point about stealth tax, it's because the Chancellor isn't announcing the freezing of the tax bans. He's announcing everything else and not being explicit with the public, and that raises concerns. But I think the Conservatives are leaving it very late in terms of winning people back over on this issue. And so we're going to have several months of Labour doing the campaign that you described, Phil.
You can't fatten the pig on market day, as they always say. Now, on a completely different note, it's April Fool's Day today, and the thing is, the news is that's mad at the moment, is that I've been unable to spot in any paper which was the April Fool's story and which were the true stories, because it's very difficult to choose between the two. Apparently, there is one in The Sun today, page 21 of The Sun, Game of Moans, about Harry and Meghan set to pile more misery on the royal family by launching their own video game ahead of the King's coronation. Apparently, that is an April Fool's story. But
it could have been true.
I read it and turned over and thought, yeah, that sounds about right. But the story in The Sun that caught my eye was page 37. I do like a good headline. This is Naughty Winks, right? Apparently, couples sleep better if they have sex first, a study found. This was based on 159 people filling out questionnaires and 2-week diaries about their love lives and sleep habits. And apparently, if they had sex first, they had a better night's sleep than if they didn't. And the point I'm going to leave you on here is...
Well, what is the point, Philip? What is the point?
All I'm going to say at this point is my sleep is terrible at the moment. My sleep is absolutely terrible.
I think that was like unnecessary information.
I'm not asking people to draw conclusions. I'm just making a point.
But can I tell you...
Oversharing is the word. Thank you, Sean.
The most important thing happening today, it's my mum's birthday. Happy birthday, Mum.
What are you doing here? You should be...
I invited my mum out and she was too busy to see me.
No, I'll tell you what it is. Mum likes seeing Son on telly.
Could be that.
That's a birthday.
I've got a totally different story.
Hold on a minute. What about this story?
Oh, OK. I've glossed over that. I don't want to hear anymore. Looking at bedtime gives you a better night's sleep.
As a market researcher, not having studied this subject, I have to say, it's a very small sample size, 159, but from my limited experience, I do agree with the point. I do agree that you sleep better after sex. I mean, I think that's
great. So I will now have that down as a scientific fact.
Well, there you go. You've got one extra person.
Simon Danchuk says.
Now, this is a totally different story coming on the back of that story there. And I want to say the trial this week of Thomas Cashman, who murdered Olivia Pratt-Cobell. And what I wanted to say, it was a story for me as I watched the court case of one murderer, and I will say 3 women. So there was the mum of Olivia, there was the ex of Thomas Cashman, who basically made sure that he got convicted, and there was also the girlfriend who attended court every day, dressed up like some sort of gangster's moll, all dressed up and what have you. And I have to say, there was something I found deeply disturbing about it. Maybe she never thought about it as she posed like a ham shank in a pink outfit there, when that was the colour of the daughter. It was the colour of the Olivia's coffin. It was what the family were doing as the colour of the daughter. And I just thought, deeply distasteful. I wish no newspaper had printed the photo of her, because she's thinking it's like a catwalk and she's going in and out of prison. And I'm just thinking, I'm hoping other people were as deeply as distressed by me there. But I thought it was 3 very different women. The mum of the child, how just controlled she's been and how wonderful she's been. The ex-girlfriend who made sure this guy went to prison. But the girlfriend, who I guess was living off all the money, all the drug money, was posing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, the world of celebrity has evolved tremendously over the last few years, hasn't it, with social media and everything else. But the idea that Kaylee Ann Sweeney, the girlfriend, promoting herself, you know, dressing to the nines to go and see the situation play out, I think is vulgar, and I think she'll come to regret it. I think she'll get a lot of kickback from that. I think it's absolutely awful.
It shows you nowadays it doesn't matter why you're famous, just be famous. Because in my day, she would have hidden.
She should have hidden. Sean, she should have hidden.
She would have been ashamed of that association. But when you talk about free women, as someone who's dealt with a lot of knife crime and a lot of, unfortunately, parents who's lost their children, we focus on the actual fact, but there's a ripple effect that is eternal. There is someone there who's lost their baby, and that pain will never go away. And there's someone who's had to step out against someone who's an underworld character who will for now ever feel nervous. And the fact that those two women have A, pushed the case, and B, made sure the right person was convicted is a huge step of bravery, real brave step.
Sean, thank you very much indeed. Simon, thank you very much indeed.
Is that a Liverpool phrase, by the way? Posing like a ham shank?
I think my grandma used to use it. I don't know where it comes from, but my grandma used to use that. So
if anybody knows where it comes from, please email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, coming up, could the government plans to give landlords the power to evict rowdy tenants ineffective in cracking down on antisocial behaviour? We'll be speaking to a property expert next who will tell us what he thinks. We've got the weather next. Stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. As we head into a new month, there are also signs that we are leaving the dull and rather wet conditions of March behind. High pressure is trying to build its way in, and that will eventually arrive as we head towards Sunday. For the 1st of April, though, we are still left with this low pressure system relatively in charge, and this lingering occluded front has brought some fairly damp conditions across Northern Ireland into parts of southwest England and Wales throughout this morning, and will gradually ease its way off throughout the afternoon as well. Some rain pushing its way into eastern coastal districts as well, but a few brighter spots for the far north of Scotland as well as maybe western coast of Wales later on. It's the southwest where we'll see some of those higher temperatures throughout today, highs of 13-14 degrees Celsius, but feeling that bit cooler in the breeze across those eastern coastal areas, no higher than 7 or 8. As we move into Saturday evening, the cloud remains with us for the most part, but the rain continuing to fade its way out, pushing more now into mainland areas of Scotland and easing off across Northern Ireland. Come the early hours of tomorrow morning, though, we will start to see the cloud breaking up a bit more across the eastern coast of Scotland and northeast England. That will allow temperatures to fall away off a bit more here, down into low single figures, but elsewhere holding up around 4, 5, 6 degrees Celsius. Into Sunday then, we start to see that cloud continuing to break up even more, and particularly across southern Scotland, central eastern areas of England, it's looking like a much brighter and sunnier day for many. Still a bit of cloud across southwest England, Wales, up into Northern Ireland and Scotland, but even here seeing highs of 10 to 11 degrees Celsius, so really not too bad of a day at all. We'll continue to see those clear spells as we move throughout Sunday night, and that is just going to allow temperatures to fall off more widely as we head into the night time. So a more widespread frost developing here and a cold start to Monday morning. But otherwise, as we head into the Easter holidays, it's looking fine and bright for many of us. Western and northern areas, though, just seeing a little rain as we head towards the middle of the week.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil.
This week, the government published their plans to crack down on antisocial behaviour. Several policies were listed, including how landlords will be given powers to more quickly eject tenants who misbehave.
Called the Antisocial Behaviour Action Plan, it includes a promise that ministers plan to change laws and arm landlords with the tools to ensure that antisocial tenants face the consequences of their actions. We're joined now by the CEO of Property Mark, Nathan Emerson. So, do you think this fast-tracking of eviction will curb and stop antisocial behaviour?
I think it's very fair to say the Prime Minister's drawn a line in the sand on antisocial behaviour, and I think that should certainly, before I answer that question, be recognised, because it is obviously something which affects every single one of us, certainly from a community aspect, and I think that's the heart of where this goes to. The changes that are being proposed are to actually enable antisocial behaviour to be more recognised and for landlords to be able to enforce an eviction in a slightly different method than is there at this moment in time. So at this moment in time, many landlords will rely on what's called a Section 21, which is a default notice to basically, if they're getting to the stage with a tenant they're frustrated with, they will serve a normal Section 21, which enables that tenant to be asked to leave at the end of the tenancy or a 2-month notice period. Section 21 is being repealed through the Renters Reform Act, and the mechanism that landlords will now use is effectively what's called a Section 8. And a Section 8 is a slightly different tool, and it has prescribed reasons that you can ask for an eviction. But that does need to go to a court. And at the moment, the thresholds that people have to be able to go to demonstrate antisocial behaviour is very, very difficult, because it's the neighbours that are suffering, it's the people in the community that are suffering, and they won't always necessarily want to come forward to do that. Landlords obviously aren't directly feeling that effect because they're not living in that property, so they are wanting to do something about it, but they need the support of neighbours, they need the support of the police, and so it's great that we're addressing it. But what we've got to understand is what is the threshold that enables this to be triggered. And also, once Section 21 is repealed, and Section 21 does cover a whole range of things, it will mean more cases going to court. And so, again, we need to ensure that whilst we're tackling the issue, we're also putting the provision in from a court point of view, because if you're serving notice on a tenant, it could take 6, 8, 9 months to actually get to court to get a resolution to have them removed. So those people are still in that property at that time, and very often probably don't pay.
I take it then, Nathan, that you're quite cynical about this idea that they're going to be removed within 2 weeks. Do you think that's an unrealistic expectation that the Prime Minister is setting?
Absolutely not. I think it's great that they're aiming for that. What I'm trying to work out is how we can actually make the changes that will enable this to happen. And the current proposals still follow a court system, and that's the bit we need to break down, because it is the community that suffers from
Nathan, I'm going to bring back your point. What do you do? Have you got to rely on neighbours coming forward to say, yes, they're creating the antisocial behaviour? But if these are the worst people you're living to next door, will you want to be the person who comes forward and says, I'm living next door to nightmare neighbours?
I think that is an absolutely fine point. And what we do find at this moment in time is the neighbours will often be the people that move. So if the neighbours are in rented accommodation, they'll often move. If they own their home houses, they will often sell because of antisocial behaviour. So I think it's great that the Prime Minister's tackling it. I think we do need to ensure that it's not the people in the community that lose out. It's not the landlords that are losing out. If tenants are causing issue and bad behaviour and drugs and all of the things that we abhor in society, there needs to be the mechanism there to get them. And I champion what the Prime Minister's done. I think it's absolutely superb. And I think every single property, person would support that.
Nathan, just quickly, if you can. I mean, the policy over recent years seems to have been focused on the idea that landlords are baddies and tenants are goodies, and that the latter needs to be protected from the former. Does this policy, do you see, change that emphasis somewhat, or should it be seen in complete isolation from it?
I think tenancy and landlord relationships have gone through a balancing process. Landlords aren't bad people and tenants aren't by and large bad people. There are a few rotten apples on both sides of that equation. I think looking at this, what this is actually doing is highlighting an issue that exists that's probably been masked quite cleverly because people have used a different tool to ask people to leave properties, and the threshold that people have had to go through if they follow the court system has been a very high threshold to prove antisocial behaviour. Very difficult to prove. And so,
thank you very much indeed for joining us today. A real insight there into what's happening. My question, which I know you share, is where do those tenants go?
Exactly, just pass them on somewhere else.
They just move to somewhere else, and really we've got to stop those people doing bad behaviour. We want to hear your views. But still to come on Saturday morning with Esther and Phil, we'll be talking to the author of a new book, Whatever Happened to Tory Liverpool. But first, here's the news headlines.
Esther, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Port of Dover says it's deeply frustrated at delays caused by coach traffic, declaring a critical incident. P&O Ferries and DFDS Seaways reported delays of up to 7 hours for ferry and coach services. They added bad weather and hold-ups at French border controls are partly responsible. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has urged the government to get a grip of the situation. A man accused of murdering a father and son in Cambridgeshire has been remanded in custody. 66-year-old Stephen Alderton has appeared at Huntingdon Magistrates Court charged with 2 counts of murder and possession of a firearm. Gary Dunmore and his son Josh were shot dead in separate villages 6 miles apart on Wednesday. A hearing will take place in Cambridge Crown Court on Monday. Millions of lowest paid workers will get a salary boost from today as the national minimum wage is increased. The hourly rate will go up from £9.50 to £10.42 for adults. The government says the rise keeps it on track to achieve its manifesto commitment. And water companies could face unlimited fines under new government plans to tackle pollution. The Environment Secretary is expected to announce tougher enforcement next week. Therese Coffey's plans include the ability to place sanctions on water companies without going through the courts, as well as lifting a cap on penalties, allowing unlimited fines. Environment Agency figures show there were just over 300,000 sewage spills last year. The Shadow Justice Secretary, Steve Reed, said the Conservatives have lowered environmental standards. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Esther and Phil.
Thank you to our chocoholic Tatiana. Now, in the 1968 local elections, the Liverpool Conservatives won 62% of the vote and 78% of the seats on Liverpool City Council. By 1972, the party had held a majority on Liverpool Council for, wait for it, 85 of the previous 100 years.
But in 1983, they lost their last 2 MPs, and in 1998, they lost their final councillor. So the Conservatives have not won an electoral contest in the city since. A new book out today entitled Whatever Happened to Tory Liverpool takes an in-depth look at conservatism in the city. Well, we're delighted to be joined by the author, Dr. David Jeffrey, lecturer in British politics at the University of Liverpool. So come on then, for a city that used to return more Conservative MPs until the 1950s than any other city, what happened?
Well, there's a few things. The main issue is that the 1960s, the late 1960s, as you rightfully said, was a heyday for Liverpool conservatism. And that was largely because there was an unpopular Labour government and people voted with their feet. You know, Labour voters stayed at home, Conservative voters were fired up. And then we had the 4 disastrous years under Heath, who was very unpopular in parts of the country, and this led to the reverse happening. The Liverpool Conservatives stayed at home, Liverpool Labour voters were energised and came out, but what we would have expected to see was a reversal of this when the next Labour government came in. But we never saw that. And there were 2 reasons why. One is that the Local Government Act, 1972, led to all-out elections across Liverpool at a really, really bad time for the Conservatives. And so they went from quite a large party on the council to just 9 seats out of 99. So not a strong position at all. But the Liberals had just started to really work the city, and Liverpool became one of their strongholds because people saw them as a solid anti-Labour vote without having to reward the Conservatives, which would be seen as rewarding Heath. And from then on, the Conservatives were constantly playing catch-up. So there were times in the late 70s where they got 1 more votes than the Liberals, but because all of their votes were basically concentrated in the south of the city, that simply didn't translate into many seats. And then since then, it's been a kind of a slow decline until around 94 when they won their last councillor.
I mean, I wondered, David, because I think most people put the failure down to Margaret Thatcher. That seems to be the sort of most popular view. But what you're saying is it's more to do with Ted Heath than Margaret Thatcher. Michael Heseltine, it strikes me, I'm not from Liverpool, unlike Esther, but it strikes me that Michael Heseltine is a very popular Conservative politician in Liverpool and is credited with doing a lot to help regenerate the city centre. Why did that not translate into more support for the Conservative Party at the time?
Well, you're right at first about people thinking it's down to Margaret Thatcher. I mean, that's the reason why I started this project as a PhD student, was because it just the popular narrative didn't match up with the electoral facts on the ground. One of the reasons why I think Michael Heseltine wasn't able to kind of spearhead some sort of resurgence or kind of get the benefit of the doubt for the Conservatives was that people were willing to see him as separate from the government, partly because he positioned himself like that. You know, he put himself forward as a counterweight to Thatcher during those years, but also because some of the benefits of the economic regeneration were massively concentrated in certain areas. So average Joe in the street wouldn't feel it. Their areas look pretty much the same before and after Heseltine. So although he gets a lot of credit, rightly, for what he did around the Albert Dock area, most of the city didn't really see any benefits from what he did. And those benefits that did accrue were not long lasting.
But how about after Derek Hatton? Why do you think, when people saw the militants bring the city to the ground, why do you think there wasn't even a resurgence after the devastation of Derek Hatton?
There's 2 reasons. One is that people felt like they were forced to choose between either backing the government or backing the city, as it were, because one of the things Hatton was really good at was presenting this not as a struggle between militant and the Thatcher government, but between Liverpool and the Thatcher government. And this was quite a powerful narrative. So there was polling in the Liverpool Echo in the 80s that said even amongst Conservative voters, people who were naturally aligned to Thatcher, they still thought that she was doing wrong by the city. And that's something very difficult to overcome, especially when the Liberals were there saying, well, you might not like Labour, but if you don't like the Tories, you can vote for us as well. So the Liberals were available in the city in the way they weren't elsewhere.
Now, obviously, I'm a child of the city. And what always upset me growing up, really, that there wasn't other parties putting a different point of view across. We became like a one-party state, as it were. And I got involved and wanted to stand in my area, not to antagonise the local people, as it were, but to say there's different ways that we can do things. And I always thought, as a population, as a group of people, we were challenging, we were curious and inquisitive. But in politics, we haven't really done that, and that's what I don't get, David. Why haven't people on the ground challenged the Labour mantra?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because Liverpool City Council's always been quite different to what's going on nationally. So in 1998, at the height of New Labour, the council went Lib Dem. And they ran the council for about 10 years until about 2008, and then when the Lib Dems went into coalition with the Conservatives, that wiped them out. And it has been, in some places, the Labour Party get about 75-80% of the vote, and so you just weigh the votes. And now you can see that fracturing. So the Liverpool Labour has split. We see the Liverpool Community Independents. We see more parties coming to challenge corruption that's been uncovered by the Max Collar report. The Lib Dems are hoping to do well. The Greens are doing well. There just isn't that voice on the right. Although one interesting point is that UKIP did very well in around 2013, I believe it was, but just not well enough to win any seats. And I think, I'll have to check this, but I think they got more votes than the Lib Dems, which is they don't like to be reminded of.
David Jeffrey, we wish you every success with the book. It's a fascinating subject. Author of Whatever Happened to Tory Liverpool, which is available at all good bookshops. For those watching on telly, there is a picture of it, and I hope people will buy it because it's a fascinating subject. Thank you very much indeed, David.
I'll be definitely reading it.
Absolutely.
But coming up, our right-wing comedians, racist and sexist. Susie Eddie Izzard, that's his name now, lashed out earlier this week claiming this. Well, we'll be speaking to GB News headliners Leo Kurtz about this later on.
And don't forget, if you're watching GB News on your TV and you're about to pop out, you can listen to us on radio, so you'll never miss anything.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News. the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 11:44. Now, the comedian, or so-called comedian, Eddie Izzard, has caused controversy, claiming right-wing comedians tend to be racist and sexist.
Speaking during the week, the trans comedian, sparked a backlash, with many saying they, them, was just pushing their agenda too far.
We're joined now by GB News headliner and comedian Leo Kerr. So, Leo, what did you make of what Eddie Izzard had to say? Are right-wing comedians, on the whole, racist and sexist?
No, he's completely incorrect. Many of us are also homophobic and transphobic. I think it really just shows how out of touch Eddie Izzard is. In the 80s, when alternative comedy, this big wave of sort of lefty alternative comedy came through, all the sort of old school 70s, working men's clubs comedians said they didn't understand this new comedy and it didn't make any sense and they didn't get the jokes. Eddie Izzard just sounds exactly like that. He's been a part of the establishment for about 30 years now, and he doesn't see that this new wave of comedians coming through and actually questioning the establishment, questioning all these stultified left-wing ideas are actually the free thinkers. And if he's going to look, he says that right-wing comedians are problematic. If you look at the spate of sexual harassment and rape accusations, they're all left-wing comedians, people like James Beach or Beich, or however you pronounce it. So, I think it's a bit rich for Eddie to come out and start pointing the finger of morality at right-wing comedians. And also, when we talk about right-wing, I don't think he understands that the meaning of right-wing has moved on. We're not homophobic, racist, Nazi bigots anymore. We just want, right-wing people just want smaller government, lower taxes, less government interference in people's lives. We don't want to build concentration camps. Frankly, I'm opposed to building concentration camps because that is state spending.
Well, good to hear that, Leo, because I go to bed with you every night. If you know that, Bill, I have you on the radio.
I'm usually there as well, Leo. Don't worry about it.
But what I'm saying, a threesome there as we go to sleep with you with us. Now, have you moved on? Are we talking about different things that you pop in jokes at? And because it's now you're taking the mickey or looking at the news headlines. So you're looking at everything, not certain topics, but absolutely everything that you think you can take a jibe at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Headliners is a great example of something that allows diversity of opinion. So 11 p.m. every night on GB News, we have 3 comedians going through the next day's news headlines. And there's right-wing comedians, there's left-wing comedians, there's comedians who don't have a political bias. And we all discuss and we debate and we come up with funny stuff around it. Whereas a lot of comedy on the BBC and on mainstream channels is just the same left-wing, hard-baked, nonsensical ideas just repeated until you're sick of them. And so I think the right has any free-thinking person is questioning these assumed holy cows that have been given to us by the leftist establishment.
I mean, obviously, Eddie Izzard had never heard of people like Ken Dodd and Kenny Everett and Bob Monkhouse and people like that. Presumably he was probably thinking of people like Bernard Manning and Chubby Brown, I guess. The question I've got, Leo, that I want to ask Eddie Izzard is, are left-wing comedians actually funny? Because I don't think they are.
No, I think it's very difficult for a left-wing comedian to be truly funny, because they've got the cultural power. So when we talk about comedy punching up or punching down, left-wing comedians for some reason always think that they're punching up at some imaginary power. They don't seem to realise that the left has the cultural power in the UK. If you look at the BBC, for example, I think it was the Daily Mail did a survey. They surveyed all comedians on the BBC who have a political, have a stated political position. 98% of BBC comedians were left-wing, and 2% were Jeff Norcott. That's the level of bias we're talking about.
Leo, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and everybody should watch and listen to Headliners 11 o'clock every night on GB News. Thanks, Leo. Thanks for joining us.
I also was surprised to find out the BBC is axing all their satire programmes now, but one. Have I got news for you? The rest of them have gone. Mock of the Week, The MASH Report.
Well, it's a good segue, isn't it, from comedians, because now to take a look at the biggest stories from the world of sport and showbiz, we've got the lovely Hayley Palmer and our own resident comedian, Aidan McGee.
Did you see the World Hairdressing Championships last night?
No.
It was live, but there's highlights tonight.
Oh, very funny. Obviously, left-wing or right-wing comedian, which one is Aidan McGee? Funny or funny?
That's centrist.
It's just
It's got worse since he's been to Butlin.
It's just a shocker. So what's happening in the world of showbiz?
Wow, lots of things this week. I want to talk about Gino D'Acampo because he has been caught up in a little bit of a scenario. He flew back on a private jet. Yeah,
it's front page of the Sun today, yeah.
He flew back from Spain on Gordon Ramsay's private jet.
As you do.
As you do. And when they arrived, some sniffer dogs came up and they went up to Gino's bags and inside was found cannabis. And he says that he needs it for his back.
As you do.
But I think when you are in the public eye, you've got to be careful. These people think they're invincible. But you know, these things happen. So
maybe he thought he was if he was on a private jet. Maybe he thought the security checks and the criminal checks were less, but the dog was straight in there.
Straight in there.
Caught him out.
Gordon Ramsay and Fred from First Dates, who we've been filming with, this new travel show, they apparently were really, really angry about the whole situation. It's not
Gordon Ramsay's always angry, isn't he?
In trouble with me, Gino. So let's see what happens from
here.
Do you know,
I made a big mistake once at an American airport. I have a beagle. I had a beagle. And obviously the beagles are their sniffing dog there. So I'm over stroking and all this, and then he's standing by me, and I thought, no, I've made a mistake. I do not want the beagle stood next to me. But anyway, just letting you know that. Don't stroke sniffer dogs. Bill?
Lots in the world of sport, isn't there, to be honest?
Yeah, I'm going to start on the football, actually, at 12:30. Manchester City against Liverpool. We'll know in the next few minutes whether Erling Haaland is going to play. He trained, we think he might have trained yesterday, 42 goals in 37 matches. Liverpool go to City today with their own Champions League ambitions. We never know which Liverpool's going to turn up. Is he going to be the one that loses 1-0 to Bournemouth, or is it going to be the one that beat Man United 7-0? City...
I'm going for the latter. I think Liverpool are going to
win 7-0.
Well, I'm not saying 7-0, but I think they're going to have that mentality. They're going to come out fighting.
I'll tell you what, if City lose, or if they even drop points, that opens the door for Arsenal this afternoon. Arsenal could potentially go 10, 11 points clear, and that might be the Premier League done, even though Arsenal got to travel to City later this month. And we've got AJ tonight, don't forget.
Yes, I was going to say the boxing tonight with Anthony Joshua.
He needs a knockout. He needs a statement victory. He needs to entertain. He needs to show us why he earned £300 million over the last 8 years. He's fighting against a fighter who is probably at the calibre he was used to going up against maybe 5-6 years ago when he was on his way up. It should be an easy, fairly comfortable win. It's at the O2, set-out crowd, of course, and I'll be watching and I'll be talking about it tomorrow as well.
Yeah. We saw in Liverpool when he was starting out in his career.
Yeah, it was about his third or fourth fight.
They had the weigh-in. They had the weigh-in yesterday at the Westfield Shopping Centre. It's the only place they could accommodate it, seriously. And they had people coming off the streets, get out of the rain just to get a look.
Well, we was there. We saw him.
Now, Hayley, I was interested in the story about Trinny Woodhall and Charles Saatchi.
Because they have split up, because the age gap, she is 59 and he is 79, and apparently the 20-year age gap just caused a lot of problems, and she is really relieved, apparently, to be out of it. I think 20 years is a lot, and especially as you get older, there's got to be differences. You want someone that's kind of in the same age range, don't you? 20 years, that's just too much.
I don't know. Rupert Murdoch, at the age of 90, whatever, 90. Seems to still find women 20, 30, 40
Yeah, but a £2 million ring helps, I think, doesn't it?
Yes, which we saw in the papers today.
Are you worried about the age gap?
Is it?
There is an age gap. There is a small age gap.
There is an age gap.
I'm a toy boy.
Unfortunately, I didn't get the £2 million ring.
No, you certainly didn't.
No, there you go.
No.
What about Leo? Where's Leo Kirst coming to all this? No, I'm joking.
You're going to bed with Leo. Yeah, no.
I can't believe you said that.
Now, I want to ask you, have you been following the stuff at Yorkshire County Cricket Club?
I have.
Michael Vaughan got cleared of making racist comments.
He got cleared on the balance of probability. Now, this is interesting because I still think the BBC made a statement yesterday, because the next question is he going to get his role back at the BBC? He stepped back from broadcasting duties last June, I think that's right. I'm right in saying. So it's whether he gets back on. I think they will decide to pull away from it. I don't think we'll see him back on the BBC anymore, and I think that's wrong. Yeah, I do. Because I think it's just more... they'll consider it more hassle than it's worth.
So an allegation's made, he gets suspended by the BBC, he's cleared...
Yep.
And he doesn't get his job back.
That's the way of the world. Don't be surprised if that's what happened. I trust you. I don't think we'll be back on. We'll see. We'll know more in the next couple of weeks. They put a holding statement out yesterday to say they'll review it at a later date. Well, that's effectively what they said. But they said they've been in touch with him since last summer. But I think they'll believe that it's too... Don't forget, the institution is not in a good place at the moment, especially after Gary Lineker 2-3 weeks ago. I would be surprised to see Michael Vaughan back on TV. I think that's wrong, but that's what I think will happen.
Interesting.
Your final story there, Hayley?
I want to talk about Brooklyn Beckham's cooking. Not my cooking, Brooklyn Beckham, because he's a very passionate chef, but... There was an Instagram photo yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, and he was cooking and he had his little dog in one hand, called Peanut, and he was cooking and an actual cork was in the saucepan, which he says it gives it more flavour. So people were very concerned. They were like, is this OK? Is it hygienic with the dog? And, you know...
Because he's done a couple of faux pas on the cooking front. I sort of wonder, though, what do celebrity kids do? And he looks to me like he's trying to find out what his career is going to be. So he's sort of giving cooking a go as if he's going to be the new Gino or whether he's going to be the new Gordon Ramsay.
Success stories, don't you? Like Roman Kemp, for example. Like, he's a really good radio presenter and his dad is a legend. Sometimes it works.
Talking to our resident chef, quickly, what did you think about that? A dog under one hand, bottle cork in the pan?
Look, I've made some fantastic dishes lately.
In your opinion?
No, well, you know, I tasted them myself. I thought they were pretty good, so I'll leave it there for now.
It always reminds me of Ali G when he said to David and Victoria Beckham, is Brooklyn going to be a great footballer like his dad or a great singer like Mariah Carey?
Well, look, thank you both very, very much. We've got to let you know about the Twitter poll. Obviously, that was whether Biden should come or not. 57% of you say that Biden should not attend the coronation and 43% of you say he should go.
Well, that's all we've got time for today. We'll be back at 10 a.m. next Friday, but stay tuned because coming up next is GB News Saturday with Bev Turner.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News.